And today we have lecture on public administration, and the precise topic is decision making, its process and techniques. You know, every official has to meet this challenge because there are number of options, one has to choose which one is the better option. So we'll try to understand today lecture what are the better option, how to make a selection of it. And for discussion on this very topic, we have in studio Dr. Rajveer Sharma. He is a senior academician, has been formerly associate professor in Delhi University, and has written book on our urban governance, and a number of articles has been published in different national, international journals on different issues, and completed and also number of projects on different social issues. Issues of social relevance, and he is also senior fellow of ICSR. So I think his knowledge and experience will help us to understand this topic and give insight how to understand this decision making process. So on behalf, I welcome him for the EduSet lecture on this very topic. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Sinha. And friends, I think I need not overemphasize the fact that decision making is an integral part of everyone's life. We as an individual and also as a part of collectivity take one or the other decision almost on daily basis, because it is the decision which in fact facilitates the way, paves the way for action. And it is the action which facilitates the achievement of the goals, the objectives for which an organization exists and strives for. And it is the achievement of the goals or the objectives by the organization that the success of that organization is really determined. So therefore, working of any organization, big or small, is closely impacted by the decisions, the nature of the decisions, and the scope of the decisions, as well as the objectives. An individual as well as the institution is successful to the extent of clear, relevant and productive decisions and their implementation. I think here also it is very evident that an organization and the decision makers would achieve the goals to the extent their decisions are clear, relevant and in accordance with the identified goals. Therefore, the study of decisions and their enactment has been at the center of the administrative, social and political and economic leaders everywhere in the world. The academicians, the practitioners, the administrators, the business leaders, the industrial leaders, they all have been concerned with not only the decision making, but also how to improve the quality of decision making, how to reach an effective decision, how to reach a decision which really is productive of the results which an organization desires to achieve. Therefore, it is in this context that we shall be discussing today various dimensions of decision making. Particularly, we shall be concerned with the meaning and types of decisions, models of decision making, process of decision making or steps in decision making, techniques of decision making, quantitative and non-quantitative analysis, then implementation of the decisions, and of course the revision of the decision. As I said, sometimes it is essential to understand the basics, and therefore we shall begin with the understanding of what is a decision, what do we really mean by a decision. And very simply stated, decision is a choice made regarding a subject or a problem. Say for example, if I have to take an admission in one of the courses, then once I decide about, say for example, economics honors instead of BCom, then that becomes a decision. I have made a choice regarding my objective, and also it is regarding a problem in an organization. Now, if decision is a choice, then what is decision making? In fact, that is the subject of the day. Decision making is an outcome of a process. Decision making is a process of reaching the choice involving the following. One, it is a process making an optimal selection or choice, that is selecting the best alternative out of the several alternatives available, meaning for any kind of a problem there can be more than one solutions. So therefore, a good decision maker would search for a best possible alternative. So therefore, it implies a choice that is comparatively less risky and promises maximum benefits. It is most productive in terms of success relating to achieving the set of identified goal or goals. The second objective of the choice and decision making is that it is an essential process of organizational action. When we say it is an essential process, meaning thereby that no organization can really function without following the decision process and taking a decision. Therefore, I am saying that it is an essential process of organizational action. Organizational behavior, organizational action is linked with decision and decision making. A method and a way to search and decide the action to be taken with reference to the objectives and aims of the organization. Now friends, after having understood the meaning of decision and decision making, decision is a choice and decision making is a process to reach that choice. Now, as I said in the beginning, that several researchers, practitioners of administration, management have concerned themselves to study the decision making processes. From traditional to the present, several scholars and administrative thinkers have analyzed the issue of decisional process, and therefore on that basis we can classify some of the models that have emerged in decision making process. The categorization may begin with the following. One, classical or traditional model of decision making, which of course can be attributed to the administrative thinkers like Henri, Fayol, Gullick, etc. According to them, decision making process involves the following steps. One, identification of the problem, setting goals and objectives or planning process. Now what do we really mean by this? the first step in decision making process is to understand the problem, to understand the root causes of the problem, and also we must make a one sentence statement while identifying the problem, the initial conditions and the conditions desired, meaning we must be clear about the goal, about the objective. In other words, the first step in decision making is concerned with the identification of the problem in relation to the goals, the objectives, aims. In other words, it is a step relating to planning and also review of the ongoing decisions. After we are able to identify the problem, it's just like the doctor-patient relationship. When a patient goes to a doctor, suffering from, say, some kind of a fever, then the doctor does not immediately prescribe the treatment to that patient. What does he do? He tries to identify the problem in terms of the symptoms, in terms of the information that is given. And therefore, fever may be a problem, but what kind of a fever a person is suffering from involves diagnosis of the problem, understanding the problem. And for that, the doctor would try to collect information from the patient and also some kind of a data he may create out of his own experience as well. So therefore, according to this classical model, the second step relates to identification of alternatives and collection of relevant information and data. Say for example, if you have to decide about the establishment or the digging of a canal in a particular area which may be rain deficit, and you want to provide water to a particular area, then of course it shall begin with the identification of the problems of that area, problems of irrigation, problems of drinking water, problems of the rain deficits, and so on. And after you have identified this problem, you will try to collect data accordingly. That is what we mean by collection of relevant information and relevant data. Now, after we have collected the relevant information and the relevant data, then of course one moves to some kind of processing of that information, data processing. What do we really mean by data processing or information processing? In very simple terms, it means that the decision maker will understand, will analyze, will study each and every information and data, so that on the basis of that analysis or understanding or study, he is able to search for the alternatives. As I said in the beginning, there can be a number of alternatives, there can be a number of choices, there can be a number of solutions to one single problem. After analyzing the data and understanding the problem, the decision maker selects the best alternative. That is, the alternative which is the most productive kind of a solution. And after this, It means that once you have taken the decision about the best alternative, it becomes a decision. And then after the decision has been taken, it is ready for implementation, and after the implementation, it is concerned with impact analysis, or what you call the review of the achievement of that goal. Now, what are the assumptions of this model? The classical model, in fact, is based on some very significant assumptions. Some of them can be identified as follows. One assumption is that decision maker has either on his own or through the access to all the sources of information has the entire data and information, and he also has the knowledge about the alternative solutions possible. Now, what do we mean? You know, when you say that decision maker has either on his own or through the access to all sources of information has the entire data, first assumption is that he is supposed to make the best choice only if the person has the perfect access to all data, knowledge. That is, he knows all aspects of the problem. One, he knows all the solutions or all the alternatives available, and then of course after going through all the alternatives, he decides the best alternative. The second assumption is that decision making is a very simple exercise which is based on some kind of hierarchy of steps to ensure a best solution. However, this classical model of decision making came under a serious challenge by the administrative thinkers like Herbert Simon, who believes that decision making is a complex exercise rather than a simple exercise, and decision making is intervened by several factors: internal factors within the organization and external factors outside the organization. In fact, Simon's decision making model involves a three-dimensional process. One, making choice that is concerned with problem formulation, search for possible alternatives, weighing the pros and cons or cost-benefit analysis, selection of the most appropriate choice. Now, in his first dimension, he says that the first step in any decision making is concerned with problem formulation. And in this aspect, I think he is almost close to the classical approach to decision making, where the problem identification is one of the first steps. Search for possible alternatives and cost-benefit analysis. In fact, here Simon introduces a new dimension. That is, every alternative has to be compared in terms of the cost and benefits. That is, the gains and the loss which will entail a decision. Now, these gains and losses have to be weighed in terms of financial the aspects or monetary aspects. That is, money is brought into the picture. So therefore, the monetary aspects, the financial aspects, the gains and loss aspects have to be brought into this consideration. And then he says selection of the most appropriate choice. Now friends, note here that in the classical model the selection had to be of the best alternative, right? But here Simon says the most appropriate choice, meaning thereby that the choice made, the decision taken may not be the best, but it has to be appropriate. Appropriate means that whatever is basically possible in the given situation, is what is required. And that is why, he talks of satisficing decision making, because he believes that complete rationality is not possible. We shall come to this aspect a little later, but he uses the term appropriate alternative because he believes that complete rationality is not possible, because there are so many constraints over the mind of a decision maker. The second dimension of Simon's decision making is a fact-value dichotomy, which in fact implies that each decision involves a combination of the role of facts and values. Fact-based decision is preferable to value-based decision according to Simon, because such a decision would be uniform, universal, stable and beneficial. The values can be used as a basis of a decision to decide the ends of a policy. Now a little more elaboration I think would be in place here. The facts are some kind of available data, information, and therefore when a decision is based on that available data, which is a fact, that decision would be more preferable because that would create some kind of a uniformity. The data cannot be changed with the change of a time or a day, whereas values may be, some kind of a relativity. We may have differences in defining what is good or what is bad. Similarly, what is morally correct and what is morally not correct. So therefore, we can decide something about policy, and these value loaded questions can be addressed when we are deciding the policy. The third dimension of Simon is that he believes that there are boundaries to rationality, that there are limitations to, constraints to rationality. And he talks of 6 types of decisional rationality: subjective decision rationality, objective decision rationality, conscious decision rationality, deliberate decision rationality, personal decision rationality, and organizational decision rationality. Now, organizational decision rationality is related to the goals of an organization. Personal decision rationality is related to personal goals. Deliberate decision rationality is a rationality where the means are adjusted to goals in a deliberately decided manner, and so is the conscious kind of a decisional rationality. Now, what are the restraints about which Simon talks when he says that, when he developed the concept of bounded rationality, he said that rationality has certain limitations beyond which perhaps the decision maker may not be able to go or would not like to go. What are those constraints on rationality in decision making? One, the habits of the decision maker. to personal beliefs of the decision maker, intellectual capacity and capability of the decision maker, informal groups and the relationships people share in an organization, lack of time, limited span of attention, etc. Now, I think the aspects that have been mentioned here are self-explanatory. In fact, the rationality in decision making is dependent on the personal characteristics, the personality characteristics, the personality frame, and also the intellectual frame of the decision maker. You know, the limits of knowledge, the limits of creativity may also be a part of the limitations, and therefore I say that perhaps Simon was right when he said that the rationality is not without any restraints, or rationality is complete. He never agrees with this concept that rationality can be complete. But he said that rationality can be enhanced, rationality can be increased. We may have the limitations, but despite that, the role of the degree of rationality can be increased by way of the following steps. What are those steps? A, practicing high degree of specialization. You know, the more and more a person acquires specialization in a particular field of knowledge or branch of knowledge, then of course he is expected to have a greater access to resources, sources of information, and of course data. So therefore, greater degree of specialization is likely to enhance the rationality levels. The second factor that can impact the increase in rationality is by way of applying scientific tools and techniques like PERT, CPM, etc. in decision making. The more use of the scientific methods, the scientific technology would enhance the rationality in decision making. Critical path method or the program evaluation review techniques will improve the rationality levels. Similarly, promoting operations on the basis of market mechanism, enhancing knowledge of political process and political institutions, that also would enable the decision maker to think more rationally, keeping in mind the political institutional information while taking a decision. Another, of course, is the expansion of the knowledge base, developing proper and clear communications from top to bottom, and of course the most important aspect relating to enhancing the rationality is effective training of the employees. By way of adopting these methods, Simon believed that one can enhance the rationality in decision making. As I said that he was more concerned with the fact that complete rationality is not possible because he has a limited knowledge of a given situation, and hence he settles down for a satisfying decision, a decision based on the combination of sufficiency, adequacy, and satisfying for the situation to get solved or resolved. Now, a few words about satisficing model of Herbert Simon. As I said, that since Simon believed that decision maker does not have the complete knowledge of a given situation. Therefore, the decision maker will settle down to a situation where the decision is able to meet the desired ends, that is, the desired needs, and therefore satisfaction. The level at which he reaches the situation of satisfied resolution of the problem, satisfying resolution of the problem, he will stop at that. He will not go beyond that kind of a decision. And wherever he believes that the decision is sufficient, adequate to resolve the problem before him, then also he would not search for any other alternatives, and he would stop at those alternatives which proves to be adequate or sufficient to resolve the given problem. Now, apart from these two major approaches to decision making, these two models of decision making, the classical model and the Simon model of decision making, there are some other models as well, and I would like to mention some of them. One is the Charles Lindblom model of incremental decision making. What is the assumption? What is the basic thrust of Blom's model of incremental decision making? He believes that the changes in decisions or the new decisions can be made in increments. That is, the policy that is existing at one given point of time can be added by some other decisions on an incremental basis. So, one step, then other step, then the third step change would be involved in incremental decision making. Then Etzioni developed the mixed scanning model of decision making. Dror developed optimal decision making model, and then there is game theory of decision making. Now, what is the game theory of decision making? Game theory attempts to work out optimum solutions in which an individual in a given situation can develop a strategy irrespective of what a competition does with maximizing gains or minimizing losses. Similarly, what is basically the question of types of decisions? Basically, the Simon model divides decisions into two parts: programmed decisions and non-programmed decisions. In fact, the programmed decisions are the decisions which are routine decisions, which are repetitive decisions. And these decisions are taken on almost on daily basis to tackle the daily routine issues. For example, the decision to release the supplier's payments is a routine decision, doesn't require any kind of a uniqueness, doesn't require much of the application of a mind. It's a repetitive exercise. So, therefore, when we discuss the types of decisions, then programmed decision can be taken as one such aspect. For example, the programmed decisions or routine decisions, in fact, recur frequently, involve standard decisions procedure, and entail a minimum uncertainty. Now, three things I have stated here that so far as the program decision is concerned, they frequently occur, they involve standard decision procedures and entail minimum uncertainty. So therefore, these are the routine decisions. Examples: reordering standard inventory items. If suppose I have to order for the purchase of certain type papers. All right. Now this reordering of the standard inventory items is basically a decision which frequently recurs. So frequent recurrence is a feature of a programmed decision. And since it is based on procedures, policies, rules, regulations, norms already existing, therefore the element of uncertainty is not there. So far as the issue before the decision maker is concerned, he relies mainly on the policies, rules, and the past precedents in making programmed or routine decisions. Whereas the non-programmed decisions, opposed to the programmed decisions, can be termed as those decisions which are unique and non-repetitive in nature. They deal with unstructured situations of non-recurring nature. They don't occur every day or every month. They are not based on the set kind of certain things. So therefore, they are non-recurring in nature, and they are unstructured. They deal with unstructured situations. Then the situations involve, the uncertainty and incomplete knowledge. In non-programmed decisions, the element of uncertainties is quite big, and the knowledge is also limited. There are no past precedents often to depend upon, to refer to, or there are no set procedures to refer to. So therefore, the lack of the complete knowledge is also there, and it involves some kind of a subjective judgment or even intuition. Non-programmed decisions are taken by applying subjective judgments or sometimes even intuitions because of the lack of structured situations. Now this is so far as the broad issues of decision making is concerned. Now, so far as the questions of techniques are concerned, the techniques of decision making can be broadly divided into two categories: quantitative techniques and non-quantitative techniques. I have basically included the questions of the quantitative techniques as follows: the cost-benefit analysis, queuing up, probability theory, simulation, linear programming, program evaluation and review techniques, that is PERT, critical path method or CPM, game theory. Simulation, in fact, is a technique which is used to test the feasibility and possible outcome of various decision alternatives. It is a quantitative technique for evaluating alternative courses of action based upon facts and assumptions. Whereas linear programming is a linear or a straight line relationship that exists between variables. This technique involves or adopts an analytical instead of intuitive approach in decision making, and therefore a linear program is a method of ensuring optimum use of resources for the achievement of the desired objectives and goals. PERT is a useful technique to analyze and control the timing aspects of a program. That is, the implementation and the decision making both should be cost effective in terms of time. It helps in obtaining lower cost and reducing program time. Probability theory refers to a chance that a particular event will occur. Probability of success is defined as the number of successful outcomes divided by the total number of outcomes. Now, besides this, friends, I would also like to refer to some other techniques of decision making. One is titled as T-chart. According to Robert Harris, T-chart is an orderly graphic presentation of the pros and cons of a decision. For instance, if one has to decide whether to purchase a luxury car, then it can be decided after weighing the pros and cons like comfort, speed, and take-off roads, structure, high or low insurance, low mileage, high or low maintenance cost. They can form part of the list of pros and cons. I have tried to present it in the form of a chart where on the one side there is a mention of the pros and on the other side there is a mention of cons. And after weighing the pros and cons, one can decide as to whether it would be good to purchase a luxury car or it would be good to purchase a small car. There is another technique which is known as Pareto analysis. What is Pareto analysis? One, it is the technique used when a large number of decisions need to be made. And therefore, sometimes even in a family, the head of the family may have to make the choice out of the large number of the choices that have to be made. Say, for example, payment of the fees of the children, going to a cinema hall for entertainment, or purchasing some kind of a house, or purchasing some kind of a milk, which, so many things that have to be done in the family. Now, when there are a number of alternatives and the number of decisions that to be made, then the Pareto analysis is used. And this Pareto analysis, in fact, helps in prioritizing which one should be made first by determining which decision will have the greatest overall impact. Meaning, we will have to decide the issues one by one in a row of priority, which aspect is a matter of more importance to us, which is likely to create a greater impact on the family or on the individual, whether sending a child to a school is necessary or going to a cinema hall with children is necessary. Now we will have to give a priority, and according to that priority we will take a decision. And that is why Pareto in fact said that after comparing the pros and cons, one can reach the decision. I have given, in fact, I must go to the first one where the chart technique was to be used, and I was giving you the example of pros and cons. Say for example, the Ministry of Home Affairs has to decide whether Kashmir conflict with Pakistan can be had by declaring the LOC as the border. The government shall have to weigh the pros and cons of such a solution, and the decision can be reached. Meaning, on the one side, we shall have to enlist the pros, the advantages, the cost, and the benefits, and on the other side, we will have to list down the the cons, that is, what shall be the likely adverse impacts of such a decision if LOC is proposed to be made a border between India and Pakistan. So after weighing the pros and cons, the Ministry of Home Affairs can make a proposal for the fact as to whether the LOC should be made the border between India and Pakistan. There is another technique which has been developed by Edward D. Bono, and this technique is popularly known as PMI technique. PMI technique is plus, minus, and interesting, the aspects of a particular decision. Now, PMI has the following aspects. One, it lists all the plus or good points, then listing all the minus or bad points of the idea, and then finally all the interesting points that one may not consider as either plus or minus. In fact, PMI is merely an improvement over the chart technique of decision making, right? Here, instead of writing as pros and cons, D. Bono says that the decision maker should write the plus points on one side, the minus points on the other side, and some interesting points which may be related but don't really explain the good or bad side of that idea. Two examples have been given. One, say for example there is a bench of two or more judges to decide the innocence or otherwise of an accused, and after the deliberations the bench meets, and suppose there is a proposal, look, tell us what is your opinion, to those judges or the members of jury. Now if we put this question in this way, then what may be the possible outcome? The possible outcome could be that the judges may express their opinion instantly, and once the judges express their opinion instantly, then they may try to get or produce the arguments in favor of the stand they have taken individually. Why? Because there is some element of ego, which D. Bono says ego investment. That is, we try to defend ourselves. Whatever we have said should be final. Why? Because it is a question of our prestige, it is a question of our intelligence, it is a question of any kind of an ego that might enter. Instead of that, if the judges are asked that this is the case, And therefore, those who wants to say that a person is innocent, they should write plus about it, or those who say that a person was really guilty, they should write about it. So the plus points and the minus points both should be written.
Okay, sorry to interrupt you, sir. We have a caller from Madhya Pradesh. Good afternoon, friend. Please ask your question.
Hello,
Yeah, go ahead. Please ask your question.
I'm Deepak Pumnani, calling from Indore.
Okay.
So my question is, if there is no alternative, then decision can be made.
Okay.
And second question is, which technique is most suitable for business concern?
For?
For business concern, which
Okay.
technique should I use
Okay.
for business concern in decision making?
Okay, fine. He has two questions. One question, if there is no alternative, what decisions should be made? And the other question is, which technique is more useful for the business in a business organization?
You know, it's a very intelligent question. In fact, when you say there is no alternative, I think there can be two answers to this question. One, that the decision maker will have to create an alternative, because without the alternative, without the solution, without the choice, no decision can be reached.
Or we can say that he doesn't want to take a decision, he's just playing with this. If he want to make a decision, there is a problem, and if there is a problem, he has to find out the decisions.
Of course, yes, because if there is a problem and he will have to find a solution,
Yeah.
then the solution will have to be in the form of any kind of an alternative.
Right.
So therefore, he will have to search for the alternatives on the basis of either his own competencies, his own knowledge, his own understanding of the problem, or maybe on account of the access to the data relating to that problem. And after analyzing that data, he would come to some kind of an alternative or a solution.
Yeah.
Now, so far as the application of a technique, which technique is
More
good
useful
for
in business.
business aspects. In fact, generally it is the PERT and the CPM techniques, and also some kind of simulation technique. In fact, it is the quantitative techniques that are more suitable for competitive environment. So the techniques have to be applied in terms of the situation in which the decision has to be taken. And as you said, business concerns, then of course it has to be a competitive environment, and more scientific techniques, the techniques that are scientific in nature, technology based, the computer application based, will be more suitable in decision making.
Okay, now you continue with your discussions.
Now, as I said that the PMI is concerned with writing plus, minus and interesting points about a particular idea, and I was giving you the example of a jury or a judicial bench, and I said that there is a question where the element of ego should be avoided. Therefore, the judges may be asked, instead of instant kind of a proposal, they should be asked to write down the plus and minus of their proposal. Why do they want to say that a person was innocent, plus and minus, and also to know the other aspects. Then the members may be asked to follow the PMI rather than individual vote or opinion right away, because in this case the person may adhere to his opinion, as it might be an issue of ego satisfaction instead of the merit of the case in totality. Now, similarly, when one has to make a decision with regard to any kind of a situation, then we will have to write on a graph of plus and minus. There is a third model, there is a third method of decision making in this, and that is known as Buridan's S method. What is this Buridan's S method? It focuses on the drawbacks of a decision when one is to choose between two equally attractive choices or alternatives. Suppose a person has been given a choice to take admission either in economics honors or in BCom honors. Now, both the proposals may be very attractive to that person. How to take a decision? Now, in this case, Buridan says that instead of having the reference to good, bad, or plus or minus, or pros and cons, the decision maker should only focus on identifying the drawbacks. That is, what shall be the drawbacks of taking admission in BCom honors, and what shall be the drawbacks of taking admission in economics honors. Now, after he has been able to identify or list the drawbacks, then he should compare as to which course is having lesser drawbacks, and after comparing he may decide as to whether he would go to economics honors or commerce honors, BCom honors. Similarly, if a lady is to make a choice between buying a ring worth rupees 20,000 or a furniture of the same worth for the newly purchased house, newly purchased home, then how to make a decision? Both appear to be very attractive for that young lady, that she is given a choice that you can have a ring worth rupees 20,000, and she is also given a choice to purchase furniture of the same amount for newly purchased home. Now, here also the lady will have to identify the drawbacks, the furniture, what are the drawbacks, and what are the drawbacks of a ring. For example, there is a risk of being stolen, there is a drawback. And similarly, the furniture may be broken in no longer a period, is a drawback. But at the same time, both are the attractive proposals. Therefore, any person, that lady, will have to decide on identifying the drawbacks of either having a ring, gold ring, or having the furniture. Well, after having discussed some of these techniques, we may have a brief reference to non-quantitative techniques or non-quantitative analysis, which are basically cultural, moral, or attitudinal aspects involved in decision making. And these non-quantitative techniques in fact involve the application of intuition, application of heuristics, emotion, norms, and values in decision making, influence of attitudinal composition or predisposition. And now, coming to the conclusion, I would say that decision making is a continuing process. That is the lifeblood of any organization or individual. It has to be free from whims and fancies, and is to follow the goal path mixed with means in rational, informed manner.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, well friends, with these words we conclude the lecture. I thank all of you for watching the lecture, and on your behalf I thank Dr. Rajveer Sharma for giving such an insightful lecture on this very topic. Thank you very much.